lines. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We are back at it again. Kenny, Jam, Kenny. We're back.
With a little bit of news this week.
A little bit of news this week. We've been looking at a couple of things that just caught our eye here on the net, as they call it. Do the kids call it the net? Nobody calls it the net.
I don't think they call it the net anymore.
Yeah.
That's what we called it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, well, we're looking at a few things that caught our eye here. Wanted to start off. Well, first of all, how are you doing?
Doing good. Just got back from a little trip last week to Vegas. Last weekend, it was fun.
Boy.
No COVID, thank God.
That's nice.
I was terrified that I was going to get
nice.
COVID. Yeah.
I know. You came back and you were wearing a mask and all.
Yeah,
that.
I was at work wearing a mask, and then like by day 2, I was like, all right, I haven't had any symptoms, so I'm good. So irresponsible.
Yeah. I think it's calmed down to the point where it's like as long as you're,
It's just not touching your face, man. That's like the one thing that I brought from this.
Yeah,
stop touching your face.
Just stop touching your face, basically.
My
That's the
skin's
main
been
thing you
nicer
can do
since.
to take care of yourself. Wash your hands and stop touching your face. Stop putting your fingers in your mouth and all that.
Oh.
For those of you.
All right, so let's jump into the first
For those of you.
For those of you that keep fucking sticking your finger in your mouth.
Stop doing that. No. So a couple things. We did do a previous video talking about specifically, well, we were talking about creepypasta in general, but one of the highlights of that was us talking about Cane Pixels.
That one hasn't come out yet, though.
Yeah,
No.
it will. Before
Yeah. No, probably not, but actually it could come out right after this. I'm almost done with it. Before? All right, I'll see if I can get the other one ready.
So one of the main things we were talking about was specifically highlighting the back rooms, which is one of the more popular creepypastas and one of Kenny's favorites over here. And we were talking about Cane Pixels, highlighting Cane Pixels' work. And for those of you who don't know Cane Pixels, I urge you to go check it out because he's one of the better editors of creepypasta and just bringing that to life. He came into fame. He pretty much came into fame with the backrooms, right? That's what he started.
Yeah, I think that's where he blew up. He was doing like video editing beforehand, and I think this is one he took interest in, and he was able to do something amazing with it. I binged all these during COVID, so to
that
hear
was
this
the one thing
was exciting.
I mean, when we were recording, talking about Cane Pixels, and I was watching some of the videos, I was almost having trouble paying attention to the actual recording because I was so like captivated by what's going on the screen.
It took me a while to realize it was all CG.
Yeah,
there was like not one bit of practical effect in that.
He did a good job.
Couldn't tell.
He did a good job, and then to come to find out, the kid is only 17 years old. And who knows how old he was when he did that? But I mean, his kids are getting
His kids are getting more and more creative, smarter every year.
Yeah, 100%. But so news broke out that he is actually been tapped to direct an actual theatrical version of the Backrooms, and from none other than A24. A24 at it again, right? They know what they're doing out there with the horror. And so his real name is Kane Parsons. The kid is 17 years old. He will be directing this film. It's going to be supposedly start shooting in the summertime. But to me, that's...
Why in the summer?
I mean, because it takes time to get this stuff prepared. And they just announced that they're going to do this.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not just going to... They don't just have
this wasn't like...
No. They just announced like a week ago that he's been tapped to actually do this. And now he has a contract with A24 to do this.
Yeah.
And they're gonna. That's actually pretty fast to start like getting things going to start filming it already in the summertime.
Yeah,
at least in the movie world. And I believe they'll be having a script written by Robert Patino. You can look him up. I have no idea, but
could be another newcomer to.
I mean,
to these scripts.
I trust A24. That they'll make the right move, and then Kane has already been proven to know what he's doing in terms of what he wants on that, in those series. And when you watch them, I mean, they hold your attention. And so, I mean, that's all you need to know. But for me, I'm pretty excited about that, just to kind of see that, they're trusting a 17-year-old kid to actually direct a film. And one of the funny things that I did
have
see,
a curfew.
Funny enough, one of the funny things I saw was that they're shooting, you know why they're starting to shoot in the summertime? Because that's when he's out of school. He's got to go to school.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
curfew. He is going to be the most popular kid in college or school.
He probably already is.
That's very true.
He's already going to be a director, like an actual director. But
real quick to touch on the writer, he wrote episodes of Westworld.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, so he has some experience, so it's good. Looks like they are teaming up like more experienced people with newcomers to sort of help guide them, which I think is great. You don't see that often.
Westworld's underrated in my opinion. Like it was kind of that thing that nobody really. I don't want to say nobody watched it, but it was one of those things where it came off of the heels of like Game of Thrones and all that. And,
yeah.
It was almost like people only had enough attention. You know, the bandwidth was only there for it. Game once that ended, it's like I don't make me get into another fandom.
But you know what's funny though? I did see a boom in Westworld after the ending to Game of Thrones, and people are like, "All right, shift focus."
Yeah.
With how poorly the ending was received. But I mean, if he's involved in Westworld, and I've seen some of it, it's it's a very futuristic show.
Yeah.
So he might be able to help keep things outside of the box, where I think this movie should be is like very outside of the box. It shouldn't conform to normal.
Yeah, when you mentioned that he was doing Westworld, I was okay, well that actually makes sense, and I'm excited for that. But it would be interesting to see how they kind of pull that off, and if they to me it's like you're saying, the weirder the better.
Yeah.
If they can do what they do with the directing and what Kane was doing, and kind of really it just the kind of thing that just keeps your eyes on the screen. And even though nothing really, when you look at it, it's like nothing really crazy is happening on the screen, but it's the kind of thing that just sucks you in, and you just can't stop watching because you're like, what is going to happen? It's like it's pretty impressive how he holds.
Suspense.
Yeah, it's just suspense building, and then he holds, it's all the anticipation about what's going to happen, and he holds you in that for so long that it's actually pretty impressive to me. But I'm excited about that one.
Could be a prodigy director.
What do you think about this?
I think if he really hits it, he could be like the next Spielberg, bro.
Spielberg,
yeah,
that's pretty high praise. I mean, 17 years old,
dude. I mean,
it makes sense from the standpoint of Spielberg was pretty young when he did. I think he was in his 20s when he did Jaws, and so to go from that and then eventually come out with Jurassic Park, and he was still fairly young then too. Excuse me, not Jurassic Park, E.T. And having those two movies come out, it just seemed like he was destined to just have blockbusters. So, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that big. I just hope that that they can pull it off in the way that I imagine. But at the same time, it's like please hit these notes, but at the same time, surprise me. You know what I mean? So I hope they can do both. But and that'll really impress me. But I have faith in it. Surprisingly enough, just watching those videos. And this kid clearly understands how to build suspense, and that to me, coupled with a proper storyline, hopefully they can pull it off.
Me too. Fingers crossed. I'm really hopeful for that.
Fingers crossed.
It's something that I've been looking out for.
Fingers crossed. And moving on to some more movie news, we also have recently found out that they will be coming out with that 28 Days Later sequel. This one called 28 Years Later. Surprise. Still holding on to the 28, but that's another thing I'm pretty excited about. Just hearing that, I'm a fan of the 28 Days Later. 28 Weeks Later was actually pretty good. I kind of like 28 Weeks Later a little bit more than 28 Days Later. But totally that was pretty early on. That was Cillian Murphy. That might have been like his coming out party. Cillian Murphy from Oppenheimer.
Yeah, but
he plays the original. Yeah, that's him.
Oh,
28 Days Later.
It never occurred to me. I just didn't see the really, dude. That's how old the
it came out a while back. Yeah.
There's kids alive today who are old enough to watch that movie and weren't around when any of them came out.
Yeah. Now, 28 Days Later was one of those kind of it was below the radar, but it was something that it was like a newer twist.
I think it was overshadowed by other zombie style movies. This would be I think they're referred to as rage zombies now, because you have your undead zombies, you have your rage zombies, you have your classic zombies. There's all sorts of zombie styles. But I think these are the rage zombies. Those are the ones that can run.
Change things up a little bit. I mean, when you look back at it, it's. I don't want to say that The Walking Dead. I don't know what came out first between that or The Walking Dead, the comic series. But when you look at how they started,
where they're going.
So with 28 Days Later, to me the one thing I noticed when you look at that movie, it's very much, it's almost like The Walking Dead and what was that? It's called Black Summer, I think it's called. If you've seen it in Netflix, it's pretty popular. It's a couple seasons in, zombie series that it feels much more personal. in the sense that it's almost like somebody was there recording everything kind of deal, and it just feels a lot more raw than and less polished than some of these other bigger movies like Dawn of the Dead and all that. But
Resident
that's what
Evils,
kind of gives it the unique stamp that it needed to stand out from some of those other zombie IPs. But 28 Days Later kind of reminds me of just it's almost like the original version of that. Like I almost think that there wouldn't be a Black Summer if there wasn't 28 Days Later. And then it's the same idea of him waking up and just kind of like, where the hell am I? What's going on? And the world's been destroyed. Walking Dead, that's kind of how that
Resident
started.
Evil.
Yeah, the same idea where it's just that person you're going through the lens of somebody who's just woken up and is finding out, and you're discovering the world kind
In
of
shambles.
with the same way that they are. So in this case, 28 years later, we'll see where this goes with this. This is going to be from Danny Boyle, the original director, and Alex Garland, who's Alex Garland. That's honestly the key thing that I'm most excited about is Alex Garland's involvement in this, just because he already makes some pretty out there type of films already, and for him to kind of put his stamp on this and kind of see where this goes with 28 years later. That to me makes me the most excited for this film, but we'll see. If there's any characters that they have come back at all, or if that's the other thing. I mean, Cillian Murphy's pretty hot right now, so if they manage to pull that off to make him be some sort of other character, or they bring back his presence somehow in that movie, I mean, that would be pretty cool. Even if it's just like a little thing here and there that just that brings it back to that original story. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I loved 28 Weeks Later. I did, and the ending to that movie was fantastic. And so I hope we get something similar to it. If you haven't watched this, that's a recommend I would watch, even if it's just once.
That series,
yeah, that series. I would watch both those movies. It's gonna be really worth the watch because it is the introduction of rage zombies. So it's a little change to the genre. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. Moving on to some other movie news and a couple things here. First and foremost. Course, they've been trying to develop this Michael Jackson biopic for some time now. I think that's a Lionsgate film, but Michael Jackson biopic. You knew it was coming at some point in time.
Yeah, it was without a doubt.
First and foremost, has it been long enough for you for them to come out with something like this?
I mean, as popular as he is around the world, with the controversy behind him, I don't know. I mean, it's been long enough. Things have changed in the times. We've learned, we've seen other people come out with their information about it. But it'd be interesting to see this, especially in contrast with other biopics of the Jacksons that they've had. I
mean, well, they're coming up. It's going to be starring Jafar Jackson, who is Michael Jackson's nephew, Jermaine Jackson's son. Mm-hmm. You see pictures of him. Definitely could pull it off looks wise. I'm sure he's been training, practicing just to get the moves down. That's going to be the key thing. Can he pull off the charisma and the just the personality of Michael Jackson, and on stage at least in particular. That's one thing, and that was some news that broke too. And then they also casted the younger version of him that's going to be playing the Jackson 5 version. Of Michael, and of course you see videos of that kid too, and the kid can move, right? So that's got to be the first prerequisite that they'll need from whatever actor they're gonna have playing this iconic personality. I mean, this film's gonna be done by Antoine. What is his name? Antoine Fuqua.
I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
I don't know either. I see it now, and I'm just like,
Antoine F.
Antoine.
Anthony.
No, it's Antoine. And he's done some pretty great movies himself. So, they got an accomplished director directing this film. They got some newer actors going to be playing. And I mean, when you're talking about casting Michael Jackson, that's obviously a massive thing. But I kind of like the fact that they went with something like not so much like a known actor and trying to make him and just shape them into looking like Michael or moving like they went out and they're like, who can really pull this thing off? And actually, when I see him, I see Michael Jackson. And when you get like these unknown actors being cast in these parts, that to me is kind of the thing that makes it exciting. But then also trying to figure out like what are they going to do with this movie. Are they really? Is it more to celebrate the person that you would see on stage? Are they really going to go into some of the darker stuff? Is it going to be both? You know, we talked
I
about
hope it
this.
is.
We talked about this, and we were like, this guy. The thing with Michael Jackson is he is probably one of the biggest personalities, celebrities, you know, in history.
I think he still owns the record for the most album sales.
I think so.
And even with like, you see artists like Taylor Swift today, and they still haven't broken that record,
but
which
in
is
today's
fucking
day and age,
surprising.
in today's day and age, I feel like it's a lot harder to stand out as that one personality because he's almost like Michael Jordan in the same way where it's like you can have other people come out and technically have better numbers than him. Someone might come out and just actually have bigger album sales than him, but will they ever be as big or as great as Michael Jackson was, at least on stage, you know, in the music industry? Probably not, because he was like the first to really come out and separate himself as like a global star. And even the Beatles, you know, they were the Beatles. The Beatles wasn't just, you know, Paul McCartney or John Lennon. You know, it was all for them together. This was one man that was just captivating everyone's attention by himself. You know what I mean? And, you know, evolutionizing the whole music industry in general. And you know, to try to bring this guy's story to the screen. This guy is as big as he was equally as complex, right? His story is equally as like, there's been a lot of stuff, you know, and we're not going to go into the particulars of it, but you know, everyone knows it's pretty much, it's out there for everyone to kind of look into. There's been documentaries made about this stuff, and you know, are they going to explore that? Are they going to weave that? That's going to be, to me, the most interesting thing about this film. Like, if they do go into that, you know, how do you weave that within the story to make this film, you know, as big as it probably should be? And you know, I'm curious to see how they pull it off, but you know, that'll be coming out sometime soon, probably more like next year or so. But you know, that's something that I'm gonna be keeping my eye on as far as like when that'll come out and how they pull it off, or if any news comes out on how they're planning to pull it off. But I'm excited about it. What you think?
I am too, and I do hope that they dig into the nitty gritty of it, because you know, it's there. It was a part of who he was, even to the end. You know, we saw him come out of the courthouse and jump up on the van on his SUV and then dance.
That's almost equally as iconic as you know, hanging the baby out of the balcony.
Yeah,
and all.
Man,
that
was
stuff
like
to
a
me
lot
was
of
like
stuff.
Equally as like, you know, obviously not for the right reasons. You know, as if you're his family,
it was memorable.
You know. Yeah, but it was like as memorable as some of the things that he did on stage, where it's just like you remember that, but then you also remember that, you know, and so that was a big part. You know, there's a lot of crazy things when you look back at, you know, the Pepsi thing, and then you know, his hair got lit on fire, you know, all that stuff. The guy was massive, and I'm just excited to see how interested, more is a better word, but to see how they'll pull it off. Mm-hmm. So some theme park news. Universal Studios, as we know, has a long-standing agreement with Fox to be able to have access to, who's now owned by Disney, so there's a lot of legal stuff going on there, but they do have a contract up till 2028, which is why you have the Simpsons ride at Universal.
It's a fun ride.
Yeah, it's a fun ride, but it did get rid of Back to the Future, so I you know,
There's always feelings there.
There's feelings there. There's feelings there.
It's you with the Simpsons, like me with the Mummy, dude. They got rid of E.T. for the Mummy. Come on.
Yeah,
that's personal. That's personal.
That hurt. But at the same rate, like, I understand that too. And then we talked a little bit. We were having that discussion about how we kind of like the fact that Universal's kind of moves pretty quick. Like, it seems to that they just drop and add things. And I think they need to do that. I think they need to do that in order to compete with Disney, because we talked about how Disney is kind of classic. Everything they have is kind of has a sort of classic feel to it. They want to always keep things, you know, the same kind of feeling. If you work there, there's a lot of rules and stuff that you have to abide by. You have to have your hair a certain type of way, because they want it to feel classic.
Yeah,
they want it to feel as close as it can to like how it was, you know, when it first opened, and it to always have that classic feel. And I get that, but Universal's, what it has going for it is the fact that they're constantly updating certain things. They went from Back to the Future to The Simpsons, and now The Simpsons, it's, from what we're hearing, is that they're willing to just go ahead and drop it even earlier than 2028 and start adding something else there instead. And I don't mind it. You know, what would you feel like if Disney started adding something Simpsons related at that point to their theme parks?
I don't know, man. It would feel really weird to me.
If
I
they,
mean,
I feel like if they did add it, it would probably be added to like California.
yeah,
It seems like
and
that's where they kind of throw. They have the sandbox for
no, you know what? I
random
don't think
type
it would be
properties.
DCA. Actually, I could see Disney California Adventure or Epcot getting something,
Yeah,
something Simpsons
mean,
related.
if they add something to it, you know, that Epcot. Yeah, I could see that too. But I feel like they're always trying to update at least California Adventures and trying to get that into a better, you know, to compete with Disneyland in terms of the properties that they have. And they're updating it, man. They're updating them as quick as Universal's updates their stuff. I feel like, but Universal's obviously they have the Harry Potter stuff coming out. Despicable Me, they've been putting a lot of effort into and pushing that, and then obviously the new Super Mario Land, you know, that's obviously, I feel like they're gonna bank on that for a bit, you know, those bigger IPs that they have access to, and then just kind of rework and change around some of the other things that they have at, you know, Jurassic World. They just added that, they just updated that, and so, you know, excited. I'd be interested to see what they do with the Simpsons ride in that whole area, because that used to be, I mean, that's a classic area. If you ever been to the Universal Studios out in LA,
It's all themed. It's all themed. Like you have, it's themed to the Simpsons, but at the same time, there's sort of an aspect of it to, what was the name of the amusement park they had in the one episode? Itchy and Scratchy Land. There's some of that. There's some of Duff World.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a cool area, but to see it upgraded and maybe brought up to more recent times, I'd like to see what they would put there.
Yeah, and first and foremost, are they going to get rid of it before 2028, or are they just going to write out that contract? Obviously, The Simpsons is still a massive IP to this day, and I feel like it's too big for Disney to not do something with once they have the opportunity to. Now that they own, I mean, they bought Fox for a reason, and that's part of that is having access to The Simpsons and not just to be able to stream it, but be able to make money off that merch, baby. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money on the table. So hopefully, I can see them dropping it sooner. That's.
Would you have a
walking
problem
into the park maybe next year or the year after, and then it's just going to be all blocked up.
Are you connected to the Simpsons ride at all, or do you not feel?
It was a cool ride, but connected to like other IPs that I've had there. No.
Would you feel bad if they got rid of it? Ultimately?
No.
Yeah, there you go.
It's one of those VR rides. Those can all stop for all I care.
Yeah. I mean, at this rate, you know, I just hope that they replace it with the only thing I'm hopeful for is that if they do that, they replace it with something that warrants that is big enough to hold down that space, because to me that area of the park is kind of sacred. You know, you had Back to the Future and then you went to Simpsons. I understood that. I mean, they wouldn't do that. I don't think so. You know, they had certain IPs. Sony. But I like the moves that Universal did. Kind of, I understood it at the same rate. You know, I loved Back to the Future, but at the same rate, you know, I kind of understood why they got rid of it, because those producers and those directors were not trying to reboot or remake or a sequel or nothing like that.
Yeah, they weren't trying to draw attention to it anymore.
They just wanted to stay, you know, what it is as a classic, and they don't want to do anything else different with it. You know, so they won't ever, unless, you know, until they move on and, you know, or they decide that's okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back. But it doesn't seem like they ever will, you know, so we'll see what happens with that. Terminator kind of had its run, but they tried to remake and reboot and do all that, and it just kind of doesn't ever hit the same way that T1 and T2, specifically T2, did. And they had that theater show, that 3D show that they would have, and they replaced that and put Despicable Me in there. And so I get it. You know, these IPs are not going to come back really in the same rate that they have some of these newer IPs come in. The Simpsons, these are big enough properties that they warrant having that space there. And I like the fact again that they replace and are always trying to upgrade things and keep things fresh there at Universal. And that to me is going to be the biggest thing that they have going for them in comparison when they're trying to compete with Disney. So, yeah, we'll see what they put there. So, if you haven't seen Halo, did you see Halo, the TV show?
I was going to binge it, and then the last episode came out. Well, there was one episode that came out, and then that episode came out. I was like, all right, I'm not going to watch this.
You really just because you heard about an
Yeah,
episode, you're
because
like,
of a
I'm not
couple
gonna watch it.
scenes. Well, I mean, to be honest, it's sort of like when I started hearing reviews about the show. I mean, primarily the fact that he took off his helmet. I was like, yeah, this is not gonna be a show for me. Could be a show for somebody, but it's not gonna be a show for me. I'm when it comes to like video games, IPs and stuff like that. I don't want to say I'm like a purist, but there's like certain things that make the characters iconic that you can't really change.
Yeah.
You know, because it really does take away from how the character was perceived. And so seeing stuff like that, it kind of like deters me from wanting to watch.
Well, you know that you said that season 2 is coming out soon, and the lead actor Pablo Schreiber, he plays Master Chief. He basically came out on record in an interview with SFX magazine to double down in that he was pretty much against that happening. He did not want them to show his face. And basically what he's saying is that, you know, he's like, I didn't want that to happen. There's certain things I didn't want to happen within the storyline that he wanted to keep more in line with the way Master Chief is portrayed in the games. And they basically said, no, we don't give a shit. We're going to still do this. And he's like, I got to do what the execs say at the end of the day. And this is just another example of like execs coming in there and just
shitting on everything.
Yeah, just completely. I don't even think they've probably played through the games.
No, these are old people who are just their lives just about money.
Yeah, they're just seeing there and they're thinking they're using their experience, you know, from you know years of in the industry to determine how some of these different IPs that are completely new and fresh to them that they don't really understand and trying to put in. I think sometimes it's that thing where it's like, I want to be able to have some say and impact on this. So if it is successful, I said, well, look, I made the decision to do this, and this happened. You know what I mean? But when it goes wrong, it's always like, well, it's not my fault. I didn't, you know.
It's the actors.
Yeah.
It's the writers.
It's the writers. They didn't, you know. Yeah, all that. But you know, he basically came out and said that was something that he was just so you guys know, that's not what I wanted. You know, and so I get that, and hopefully, you know, him as the actor, I mean, I'm hoping he has more input in season 2 and how they pull that one off. It just hasn't happened
with this. It happens with a lot of shows. So it's not like something unique to them.
Yeah, 100%.
Like it happened with The Witcher. You know, he came out, he's like, I left the show because they were going in a direction that I didn't think the story or the characters should be in, you know?
Which it's crazy because wasn't he one of the main reasons why that show even got off the ground was because...
Yeah, it was.
He's a fan of those.
Henry Cavill.
He's a fanboy.
Made it pop, but he was the same situation. There's only so much I can do.
Yeah. Well, Halo Season 2 comes out February 8th, Paramount Plus. So if you don't have Paramount Plus, I think if you have Apple TV also, you get access to the Paramount Plus stuff. So you don't just have to have Paramount Plus, but if you have Apple TV, you can go ahead and take a look at season 1. I mean, I saw season 1. There was some good. There was definitely some bad. If I had to rate it out of 10, I'm giving it like a 6 or 7 out of 10, just because there's certain things that there are certain episodes. Yeah, there were certain parts of the series that I was just like, okay, what's happening here? Like, I want to see some action first and foremost. The first episode kind of was pretty good at that. It gave you some of that. You know, you hear the sound effects of his armor regenerating and things like that kind of really reminded you of the video game, and the action was pretty cool. But I just want to see Master Chief be a badass. You know what I mean? And I just want to see him do what he does, like how we know him in the games. And they didn't quite hit it out. They didn't quite hit it with that one. And I guess that's what kind of really made me rate that at like a 6 or 7 out of 10 was that I had this expectation, and they definitely didn't quite go in that direction that I was hoping that they would. Thus, 6 or 7 out of 10. But I mean, hopefully season 2 picks it up. You know, sometimes with these kind of shows, the season 1 always ends up being more of like a, you know, just so you don't know. We have to let the people know who haven't played the games know what this story is about and where we're going with this. And hopefully it picks up, you know, season 2 and you get a lot more action. Hopefully there's a bigger budget. They can pull off some of those sequences that we were hoping to see from season 1. But
we can do like the fans of The Office do. We can just pretend season 1 doesn't exist.
Yeah, you could do that too, or just watch your favorite episodes from season 1 and then move on to season 2. That's a good thing about streaming. All right. Last bit of news that came out recently is they came out with a trailer for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, first person game. Troy Baker's voicing him, and that's already a key thing. I've heard the voice. It's kind of like that thing where he sounds a little bit like him, but not quite. Harrison Ford's hard to like. Harrison Ford's Harrison Ford for a reason.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, he's got nobody else sounds
got the
like
voice,
him. Really.
got the look.
Yeah, nobody else really sounds like him, looks like him, moves like him. He has he is a superstar in his own right, and it for the game itself. I mean, it's going to be interesting how they pull it off. The story feels like it captures the energy of the original trilogy, but it does have the first person thing going for it, and so I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of would have preferred a third person version of the game as opposed to first person, but watching the gameplay, it looks cool enough. I'm obviously going to try it out. How do you feel about the third person versus first person?
Depending on the game, man. It's not like, I don't know, this kind of IP doesn't feel it feels more like it should be a movie style where you can see the character in third person as opposed to like
Uncharted.
Yeah, as opposed to like Master Chief, where it's like you're supposed to be playing Master Chief. You're supposed to be Master Chief going around doing all this stuff. And Indiana Jones is you're watching him do all this crazy shit, and you're like, oh man, how's he figuring all this stuff out? So I think the first person and third person would really depend on that. But I honestly, in this, I feel it'd be a little bit more of a detractor for it to be third person than first person.
Yeah, I kind of agree, especially because we're used to watching movies of him.
Yeah,
it's not like what they're doing with the Halo show and Master Chief, and it's different from going from game to a TV series movie or whatever. In this case, you're going from a movie that we've seen this guy acting out in this movie and him moving around, and his jacket and his whole costume and everything about him is so iconic that it almost feels like a disservice to now be in first person. And it's cool. You can whip things, you can shoot people, and you can punch people and all that. But I kind of wanted to be able to see him running around and doing things.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm still going to play the game. Hopefully the story is enough to make up for that. But either way, anything Indiana Jones, I'm going to be excited about. But we'll see how it turns out.
I mean, there was Crystal Skull. I'm just kidding.
You know what? Crystal Skull.
I didn't hate them.
Crystal Skull. I would rather watch Crystal Skull than the last film.
I didn't see the last one either.
You haven't seen the last film?
No.
You really are not the movie guy. Yeah. That's all right.
I don't know, man. As of recent movies haven't been catching my attention, dude. And I think it's because like the same thing, the Crystal Skull, they're like, oh, he had a kid, now he has a daughter, and it's like, okay, what's the end goal with this? Like are you guys just grasping for straws and to see what sticks? And
it also just comes down to whether or not you really care for it at all or have the time for it.
I mean, if this is the direction it went, I mean, I'll watch the old ones. I'll marathon them. I'll watch them. But the thing with the two new ones is like they felt like grasped for straws, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna pass on the mantle. It's like, okay, I thought you already passed on the mantle over there, and now you're gonna pass the mantle over here. It's like, dude, pick a struggle and stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I mean, I can't hold it against you, even though I always want to hold the fact that you don't watch movies against you, but. This was like I did just watching the last movie. I mean, I can't, man. Like if you decided to not watch it, it might be you might be better off. You might be better off. It didn't really pull it off. It was kind of one of the bigger disappointments this past year for the movies. But
damn,
I don't know. Hopefully there's a way that hopefully the game, and to me what I've been noticing is games seem to be pulling off the stories of some of these movies better than. Spider-Man 2, I'm thinking about like Spider-Man 2 and the story. As good as like these Marvel movies have been, when you're talking about like Venom and those movies that Sony has done by itself, those standalone, which was why I'm kind of worried about Madam Web and Kraven. I hope they can pull it off, but I'm not going to have high hopes for those. But, Spider-Man 2 is honestly pretty good in terms of like, to me, way better in terms of story and the way that they portray some of the characters like Venom in that one than the movies have done. So, I mean, that's the one thing that I think this game has going for it is that I'm hoping that these developers are able to pull off that story.
Yeah, it seems like the video game is the next evolution in storytelling because of like You know, you can't
The technology.
you
First
can't
and
fucking
foremost.
string up this full fucking
Well, some of these games are almost like
Harrison.
you can.
No, I'm saying like you can't string up Harrison Ford and swing him around the fucking room.
No.
You know, but you can do that in VR or in a
Yeah,
in
you
a
can pull it
video
off in a
game.
video
Yeah,
game.
and it doesn't because you know it. You don't see the character as old
Yeah.
in the game. You know, he can be whatever age they want him to be.
And the tech is catching up. Like the tech is at the point where it's almost like watching a movie.
Yeah.
You know, you can really weave the movie and the story and the cinematics in there more with the gameplay to really make it feel like an experience rather than just playing a game. So, I mean, either way, I'm still excited for it. And, you know, third person or first person, you know, in this case, first person is what it seems like it's going to be. But, you know, either way, I'm be excited for that and be playing day one probably. We'll see how it turns out.
All right. And then we turn to our next big piece of news. This one we're going to be talking about a little bit more. And it's recent changes to Ubisoft's Game Pass, which is, I think it's called Ubisoft Plus Game Pass. Give me a second. Switch over to yours. But yeah, with this switchover, or as they called it, a rebranding of their Game Pass system, the only thing that really drew my attention was part of the sentiment behind the rebranding. And this is quoted from an interview that the Ubisoft execs did. So it's gamers need to get used to the idea that they don't own the games that they buy, which to me seems like a really negative sentiment, especially the way Ubisoft has been going recently. We heard of them recently erasing games from people's libraries because you haven't played the game in so long, you know. And
that I don't understand, because it's like if I bought this, I mean, I could if I don't want to play a game for 2 or 3 years before I actually play it, I should be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is like people don't like to be told, you know, how they, you know, don't tell me. I think they would almost been better suited to just come out with this stuff. But when you come out and say things like that, I feel like that's one of the key things. It's going to create the upright. To
me, when they do things like that, it lets us see the sentiment again behind their statements.
Yeah.
Because a statement's not just like, oh, they should get used to not owning their games. You know, there was like a whole idea behind why it happened and how it happened. And, you know, just to read a little bit of it, it's, there we go. We looked at consumer behavior and how people were interacting with our offer, and we saw opportunity for us to evolve. Okay, that's part of it, right? So this opportunity for us to evolve, whenever a company comes out and says that, to me, it's always meant like we're gonna try to get more for ourselves. Anytime a company evolves and they put out this thing and they try to make it feel like, oh, the client, the customer is gonna gain so much more, you know, that's fantastic, you know. But in the sense like this, where this is also part of the sentiment, when we look at how gamers engage with our different games, we see that our back catalog is still very active and alive. So we saw an opportunity to offer these worlds to our consumers for a low fee, and this is a response to the behavior that we saw from players. So literally they're saying, we saw players
actually still playing
interested in our old games.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how we capitalize on that.
How can we make more money?
Yeah.
On it? At the end of the day, anything, when I'm hearing an exec say anything,
we're going to make more money.
It's about money. Yeah, we're looking to make more money on this, and that's pretty much what we're trying to do.
And to me, that's like the worst part of it, dude. Not only were you erasing games from people's libraries, which is, dude, I paid for the game. I paid you because you said I was going to be able to keep using this.
Yeah.
Right. And then they hide behind their fucking 85-page contracts that you have to agree to, which they absolutely know nobody's reading. And nobody's reading.
Knowing that. Gamers, news like this will just make you want to go out and buy the disc more.
Yes.
Because at that point you're almost like concerned that this might be, if this is going to be where you guys are going, well then I'm going to start buying. And what happens when sales for the actual physical copies start going up because of news like this, and how do they react to that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or are they just going to stand their ground and be like, no, we're only going to release on digital now. This is where the platforms have been going. And from what I read, it seemed like his reasoning for it was pretty much that they think that the industry is going that direction of streaming anyway, similar to the way that music went, where it's like
And
you stop
movies.
buying CDs, right? You just have Spotify. You just have YouTube Music. You just have whatever services, Pandora and all that's where you get your music from. And now all this stuff's available to you there, but you're paying a monthly fee for it now. And I think that's where their mentality is coming from, or at least their thought process and how they can capitalize on this now is going in that direction. And we're going to be, and then now you start thinking about it like how movie streaming and TV streaming works, and how the different, everyone came out with their own platform, but only some of them were big enough to actually pull off, the Disneys and the HBOs and all that, to be able to actually pull that off. And then you started to see the counter to that is like, well, Showtime's not big enough, or Paramount Plus isn't big enough to be on its own, so now it has to be bundled with this other service. So that you
Hulu
can,
and Disney Plus, ESPN and Disney Plus. So it's not just happening to like movies and stuff.
if that happens,
But-
that's what I assume is also going to happen from there.
Yeah, but the problem with this lies in that I would see it more like a movie than music. I mean, you go back today, and how many movies that people watched growing up aren't available on any sort of streaming service, right? So you still got to go out and buy the movie digital, or you got to buy a DVD, or you got to buy a Blu-ray. And that's sort of where I have a feeling that this thing is going. The issue with that is they control the supply and flow out of most physical games now,
Mhm.
So what happens when, you have Ubisoft saying, well, the amount of people playing this game is not worth us keeping it alive on our servers for them to download and store your game save. So we're going to get rid of it.
Mhm.
Right. We see it happen all the time with companies like Netflix, where they have contracts to have movies on there for a year or two. And then they go like, well, we don't want to renew because now nobody watched it. So it's gone. And then now that movie's going to sit somewhere and rot because they didn't have a big enough offering. They didn't have a big enough audience watching it, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is where companies are also going to start doing things like trying to entice people with things and then taking them away, or say, we brought the game back for a year, or we're going to rotate our titles every so often, right? And it sort of, again, comes back to predatory practices of, give and take, give and take, give and take. We're going to have to figure out a way to keep you here, subscribe to our service, as opposed to nowadays, if you go back and you buy one of these older games on Steam, you can get them for like $5-10, right?
Yeah.
And then you own it forever. Ubisoft streaming, their services, $17.99
Yeah.
to access all their games, or at least the games that they want you to have access to.
There'll be a curated list of them. It's not going to be just all
it's not
going to
be,
games, right?
and we've seen it because other services have done the same. Whereas they'll include some of the games, but not everything. And then, you want some of these older games that we don't want to just have on our regular list. All right, now you're gonna have to pay extra to play that game.
Yeah.
These games that,
whether you play it or not.
yeah, are generations behind, and you're gonna have to pay extra to play those games.
Yeah.
And I feel that if we're going in a direction where we're moving into services for games, and then it's like, okay, now I gotta play this game. I'm paying $15 a month to play the game, right? But now there's like 6 games I gotta play because they all released around the same time, or they're all super long, and then now I'm running out of time. I'm not gonna be able to play. So now you're gonna be paying $20 a month for 3 months. You might not finish the game in that time. You might finish the game in that time. You might not finish any of the games at that time. But what about people that replay their games a bunch of times? And I'm talking about the Resident Evil 4 people. Those people play that game all the time. I have a friend who plays that game like every 3 months. Now imagine he didn't own at least a physical copy of the game that he could replay every 4 years, but now he had to pay $15 a month to play the game, but that's the only game he's playing. He's paying $60 to play it over 3 months, and now he has to keep repaying that fee every time he wants to play it.
Even if he decides that he's going to deactivate and reactivate.
Yeah, you're
like
still having to pay constantly. Instead of the one-time fee, you're going to be paying fees whenever you want to get out on anything.
And the other thing too is that those people that would be paying for that are the people that can afford it, mostly older crowd, right? That maybe those are the people that also don't quite have the time to just be playing games and sitting there and be playing games all the time because you have other responsibilities, and that to me is kind of where the clash is going to be. Also, when you're coming out with another thing that we're going to have to pay for monthly like that, and it's only going to be these certain kinds of games, at what point does the market of monthly subscription, not in whatever monthly subscription, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Disney Plus, HBO Max, Netflix, all those ones, it's already kind of getting out of hand with the TV and movie streaming. That it's like, if this comes into play now, it's like, okay, now I have to pay for this monthly just to be, and this is another thing that I'm adding to my. At what point something's got to give? You know what I mean? And to me, is that's where it's like, is this going to be that thing that kind of pushes it where it's just like, no, now we're kind of we're not going to buy your service because I'd rather keep these other things than that.
That's been the sentiment that I've been seeing online when I went through and read these, and even other big YouTubers have come out and said, like Linus Tech Tips, they do a weekly Friday stream, and it was titled like I'm getting accustomed to not buying Ubisoft games, and that's a great sentiment. And I hope that Ubisoft sees this, just like the debacle with Unity when they're like, well, now you're gonna have to pay us per install even if your game is free. And that's where that's where I saw the parallels to Ubisoft, where it's we're gonna try to get you in here for cheap, $15-$20 a month, right? It's and it's not very cheap. It's $18 a month. That's a lot of. That's more than a lot of streaming services cost.
Yeah, I understand it's like a video game versus a movie, which is different. But at the same rate, these I just don't. The video game industry has a storied history, even in recent, of coming out with things that they think that the gamers need and want, and just experiencing that counter, that backlash in a way where they have to backtrack because they're like, okay, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to.
We talked about it in the other day's video with EA and Star Wars Battlefront 2. They had a backpedal. Unity, they had a backpedal. Their CEO ended up stepping down because of how bad this was. So,
and every time I see a CEO step down, I look at the picture of this guy, old,
yeah, old, out of touch,
all old,
and that is literally screams out of touch. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah,
I know how to manage people, but I don't know what my audience wants.
And that to me is where it's different than even say the movie industry. Because movie industry, yes, you have a lot of older execs, and there's some of them that are out of touch too, but it's a little bit different than say in the video game industry, where it's a technology that's always evolving, and the way that the people are playing games is always evolving. What kind of games we're playing and what kind of games that are the ones that are the most popular ones, that seems to be evolving too every 5-10 years. And you have to keep up with that, because if you and the ones that have been the most successful are the ones that kind of saw and were able to plan for that, and also execute plans ahead of time and be the forefront and be like creating the fads, like the games like Fortnite, and even Call of Duty was a little bit behind the curve, but they were able to kind of create a structure that keeps that IP one of the bigger ones out there. Minecrafts and all these kinds of games like that just are massive, and I don't think people realize how massive they are. But in an industry that's always evolving, and then you have these same old execs trying to like go back to the same old tactics that they, in the name of money, in order to just make more money. That's always going to be the versus, like the thing that it's like the gamers versus the execs, and that's really what it comes down to. It's not the gamers versus the devs, because the devs are always seemingly understanding kind of what people want, but they can't. They're not the ones who can make the decisions, the
Yeah.
final decisions on things.
It's always the executives.
It's always the executives that always tell you, no, this is how we're going to do it. And you're always hearing about this exec or that exec stepping down because of that. Because it's like you're out of touch, and you've already made all your money. You're just trying to figure out how to make more money.
Yeah.
And so you're not the how do I say it? Like the motivation to want to understand and see where people really are at in terms of gaming and how we want to go about gaming is not there. The motivation first and foremost is not there. Why? Maybe because you've already made your millions and you're just you're just trying to hold on to the company.
Or maybe you were a one-hit wonder that got lucky. I mean, we don't fucking know. We don't get to see behind these doors. We don't really get to see, like you said, the execs have the last word, but sometimes I think that they do sometimes bend an ear and be like, okay, well, I'll take your word for it. And they might let some things through, which is where you have successes. But whenever it does feel like the exec is on top of it and the exec is saying like, no, I know what I'm doing. This is what we're going to do. A lot of the times it flounders.
Yeah.
It
hardly ever works out, it feels like.
Yeah. And these decisions, again, like we'll go back to a big one from last year, and it was again the Unity one. Dude was he was the executive who said, "Oh, if you charge a player for bullets after an hour of playing, they're not going to buy them. They're going to put the game and walk away." He goes, so his idea was the transaction comes later down the line once they have invested so much that the sunken cost fallacy takes hold. That's when we start charging them, and that's what I see here. They're trying to entice people in with a massive library of games, a massive at your fingertips day one releases like Microsoft does with Game Pass. When they made the switch over to this, they included the new Assassin's Creed The Lost Crown, which I was really looking forward to play, but now I'm just not going to play that shit. Fuck that. They're like, yeah, come in. You don't have to buy Prince of Persia now. You can buy it later, right? Okay. What if I decide to never buy it because I'm paying for your service, and then one day you decide to shut down the shit? Now I'm shit out of luck. And they try to get by with these ideas of like, oh, well, your game save will be there forever even if you uninstall the game. Yeah, that's fantastic. You know who else does that for me already and hasn't charged me an arm and a leg for a subscription service? Steam. Valve did it. If Valve could do it, for the last 15 years, why can't all these companies understand that? Hey, man, this is a standard now, and it has to be part of what you offer. And it's not, because again, like you said, it's all coming down to the money, and hopefully they see that this is not going to work great. Hopefully, I mean, it's probably not going to happen right away. You're going to have 1 million people sign up for the service. And hopefully they see the light, dude. Once they start taking things out, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're going to start shrinking the library you have access to. And people start seeing like, hey, this was a mistake. We can't let this happen anymore. We saw the changes with China and their gacha systems and their incentives to play video games every day, kind of being stepped on. So hopefully something also comes up and we're able to figure out, a better course of where this thing should be going, instead of going into 1 million subscription services that you're never going to be able to hold on to anything, because digital is the future. But it's not the future that I think we need right now, especially with these companies that are just looking to make $1 off of it.
Do you ever think that the physical copy will ever go away? And if so, because it seems like definitely in comparison to like say music and movies and TV, that transition is obviously a lot slower of a process in terms of video games. The reason why GameStop is still around is because people still want to own that physical copy. And then it comes down to, they don't want us to have a physical copy, right? Because they want us to have the digital.
Have it forever.
Well, not only that, but I don't want you to be able to give your friend the game to play himself when
he should pay for it.
He
too.
should be paying for it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes down to money always.
And this was, I think, the same thought process behind the end of couch co-op games. It was, if two of them are playing it, why can't we just sell them each a console and then each a copy of the game and they can play from their house? It did make playing easier, but it was also an idea that I think ultimately was designed to make them money, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know, as detrimental as something like this, I would say no. I think maybe it was a step in the right direction for, you know, people to be able to play together, but at the same time, it was kind of very low level. Well, because it didn't take too much. It didn't take away from anybody else.
Right. But that also, depending on how you feel about it, like there's a lot of, you know, I feel like that takes away from the whole physical person to it just only makes the everyone so much more isolated, like the way things have been going.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, you used to be able to have to go and hang out with each other and play this game together. Now we're taking that away and just making it so that you guys can do it from the comfort of your own rooms. And it's like, well, you're only adding to that problem, but you know, that's a whole nother debate in itself. But the whole isolation thing and people just getting used to, it's like a different level of, it's a different form of companionship and being able to, you know, we've gotten used to it now, just being able to talk to people and do it through headset and all that. But it's still different to me. To me at least, there's still a difference there in terms of what you get from that in comparison to, say, being physically next to each other. There's people that are just comfortable with staying at home and almost like to the detriment of themselves will not go out and do things because they're just so used to that.
Yeah.
They're just so used to just being at home and being under that kind of security blanket of just, I don't want to leave my house because I can get my little fix that I need, my social fix.
That's why Amazon works, because people don't leave their house.
People don't want to leave their house. People don't want to have to go out.
Touching back to the physical media of it's good. I mean, you have games like limited run games where they will make physical copies of certain games that are digital only. And then you can own a physical copy of the game, you know. But to me, I've always liked owning physical media because, again, when these companies switch hands, when they change, when they go out of business, what's going to be left? Nothing, you know.
Right.
And I'll give you an example of that. Fucking the Weinstein Company. How many movies aren't they holding hostage after this fool got convicted of sexual assault on these women? Fucking, he's sitting on a bunch of Kevin James movies that he doesn't want to. Kevin Smith movies that he's not Kevin James. Yeah. Please, no, you can sit on those. We don't need those movies to come out.
Don't hate on Kevin James. Yeah, Chuck and Larry was
King
hilarious.
Of Queens.
Yeah, the King of Queens, man. Come
on, man. I've
actually never seen that show.
But it was alright. It wasn't great. It again leads to the fact of once these things die out, these companies, what's going to happen? Well, somebody's going to hold all this media hostage. Somebody's going to hold all the movies hostage. Fucking, you know, we're not going to be able to remake them because, you know, the studio's holding on to the license. And it's like, well, if you want to pay me, you're going to have to pay me an exuberant amount of money. Right. And so the fact that we're able to have physical media, or even like with Steam, where Steam, I guess it appears, I don't know what exactly the contracts are, and I doubt that these contracts are public, but if they are, look into it. When they make with these movie studios, like, so after Disney bought Fox, the Deadpool game was like in limbo, right? I owned it on Steam, and even though people weren't able to buy physical copies of it because they all got recalled, people weren't able to go onto game websites like Steam and buy the game new. I still had access to it. I still have access to it. I'm not even sure if it's back up for sale, but I still have access to it because a company like Valve made sure that I was going to have access to what I bought, even if the other companies went out. And so, I mean, if there was a company like Valve in between this saying like, hey man, we're going to make sure that all these things get held and we're able to then access them later because you own them and the license is still valid, I wouldn't follow any of this digital stuff. Steam is like the only company I trust for digital. And another game that Valve has kept up for digital was the Friday the 13th game, and that's still going through like some massive legal battle, and I'm still able to access it. I'm still able to play. I'm still able to play with other people who own the game. So I think this is I feel is more of telling of what the industry is going through right now. So I don't think that this is going to be great for anybody. Only time will tell. Maybe Ubisoft will, grow a conscience and decide to be like, all right, well, we're just going to leave everything on there and not do this whole give and take like they're known to do. And it's mostly take. They rarely give. It's more take. But hopefully this doesn't go bad, because if it does, I think a company like this ruining it for other companies that do it well could be detrimental, even for like Microsoft.
Yeah.
But we'll see where this goes. We'll see how they decide to keep this afloat. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. Hopefully, Ubisoft doesn't shoot themselves in the other foot after this statement. But, we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, just because, but that's the kind of thing where it's, we won't know until like 5 years, 10 years goes by.
Yeah, a couple years from now.
And then we'll see how the state of games is then. But, if you're trying to, if your focus is only to, we've seen this before, and in my opinion, at the end of the day, is just if your focus is only just to make more money, you're going to run into that backlash no matter what.
Yeah.
If your focus is to see what the gamers want and are doing, and to try to, within all that information, trying to come up with something new that may be that we don't even know what we want, but then you're able to kind of come out with some sort of product or something that it pulls that off. But I think you have to have the gamers in mind at the end of the day, and that's got to be your fundamental approach. The one thing that kind of is the overarching topic or the subject that you need to look at, and the approach is got to be, what do the gamers want, and how do we beat the competition in getting that to them. And if your approach is like, well, how can we make more money on what we have, and how can we rearrange things to make it so that we're trying to convince them and this is what you want, in the name of just trying to make more money, you can see how that goes for you. And we've seen that time and time again. It never really seems to work out, at least not the way that they expect, and there always has to be some compromise, and there always ends up being some compromise.
Yeah.
Gamers are a lot more louder than any other type of fandom, I think, especially because we're on the internet.
Gamers rise up.
We're on the internet. That's what we do, is we're on there, and you'll see that backlash. We've heard the stories of certain companies and their stock prices, taking a hit, their stock. Who was it? Was it EA, or who was it that got hit so bad that the stock points went down like a significant amount, to some backlash? I remember that was a thing.
I think it was EA.
It might, yeah. EA has got a storied history with that themselves. They're a
Multiple
big
times
company.
it's
The
been
bigger the company, the more bullshit that seems to go on.
They try to get away with.
Yeah, and at some point, hopefully there's enough of those kind of companies that end up seemingly taking a different approach and benefiting from it, and we keep seeing that happening to eventually some of these bigger companies that own the rights to some of your favorite games, and are able to be, to see the light and know that, okay, we can't quite tell them what they want. We need to see what they want and see how we can best apply that ideal and provide it to them. And that's where I'm hoping this ends up, but again, we won't know until years down.
I'm not opposed to subscription services, but the customer has to gain something from it. It's not just give. No. We don't do that here.
We'll see where it goes from there, but
all right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you learned something today. If not, come back next week. We'll have another one. You can learn something then. We'll just leave you with peace.